Hey there, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back. I'm your host, PattSun, and today we're gonna be taking a look at r/NuclearRevenge, where we will see two fascinating stories of vengeance. Let's begin. Cheat on me? Me and my new best buds will gaslight you into an asylum. Posted by a deleted Reddit user.
It all started a year ago. I was a university freshman studying psychology, and she was a girl who worked as a waitress at the cafe nearby. I used to go there a lot and still do. The latte there was divine. We'd just chat between her serving guests. After a while, we moved together and were happy ever after. For 5 months. Part 1, Heartbreak. She barely ever stayed home, always talking about how she got extra shifts, got some family business, etc. I was a curious man, and so after some digging, I found the name of one of the other men she was dating. I thought he was the only one. Spoiler alert, he wasn't. My heart sank at the thought of her cheating on me, but I managed to keep my calm. Being the cautious cat I am, I decided to wait for more evidence to see if my assumption is real or not, but then another strange name popped up, and another, and another, and another. At this point I was no longer upset, I was seething in rage. I decided that breaking up with this bitch isn't enough. I have to break the bitch herself. I began formulating my revenge plan, including making a pattern map of the bitch, observing the method with which she circled between us. Being a six-timer, she doesn't have much time to split between all of us, so I have plenty of time to dig up and gather evidence, all for Step 2. Part 2, Avengers Assemble. I followed her to her second lover, a guy from the same university who was studying acting. After they parted ways, I came up to him. This is what transpires between us. Me, hey, do you have a minute? A1, yeah. Why? Me, great. Now, this is extremely relevant to you and it is really important, so how about we go get something to drink? We got to a bar, where I asked him to stay calm, and then showed the evidence to him. At first he refused to believe, then he cried, and then we became best buds. He agreed to help me punish the hell out of this bitch. I told him to act like nothing happened, not to confront her about this and not to act like something was wrong. Me, we will have our revenge on this bitch. I promise we will, but the time isn't right yet. We need more people in on this. A1, can't we just dump her? Me, we can, but it's not that much of a difference to that bitch. We need to do this to stop her from doing this to anyone else. A1, okay then. Over the next week, we recruited the other 4 into our Avengers. We all decided to devote ourselves to this. By the way, it seems that each of us was chosen for a different reason. I seem to have been chosen as a potential husband. How flattering, but no, thank you. A1 was picked simply because he has a cute face and is good at jokes. A2 was rich and old and nice and lonely, go figure why. A3 was there only because she liked sex with him. A4 is a bodybuilder who liked to buy her expensive gifts and was actually planning to propose when we stopped him. And A5 is there because he has sway with the HR in a company she is planning to apply for. We all wanted revenge, and revenge is what we got. Part 3, Payback Time. I have explained to all of them the concept of gaslighting, and we put it to work. We moved her stuff from one house to another. We changed the configuration of the rooms in our house. We changed the light settings, our pets, dates, etc. Slowly she began to crack. She became irritated, snappy, beginning to question us. She yelled at us, berated us, constantly insulting us, and calling us derogatory names. We kept her on edge constantly, despite being caring and sweet to her face. Even as I get called a useless son of a bitch, I was happy because I knew this was the culmination of our revenge. A2 pulled out halfway through, because he couldn't take all the abuse since he was old and weakened. The rest of us saw him breaking up with her and her going ballistic. We did our best to help him. One day, she attacked A1 with a knife. He escaped with several shallow wounds and hid out in the second-floor bathroom, where he called the cops. We all showed up to bail her out, and when she was released, saw us all waiting for her, she finally lost it, laughing hysterically and curling up and slamming her head on the floor. We have broken her. She was admitted to an insane asylum where she stayed to this day, and us 6 dudes became close friends, due to us sharing secrets during the time we were executing our time. A1 required 14 stitches in 3 locations and got some creepy-looking scars from that incident. The rest got away scot-free though.
Oh, so did the cops and neighbors started clapping afterwards? I mean, A for effort, OP, but creative writing requires one certain skill, creativity, which is obviously lacking in your story. Nice try though, B-. And now for today's second story. My dad's ex-girlfriend robbed us and he gets even. Posted by Reddit user Elibron Mystic.
Hi everyone. I haven't been on Reddit for more than a week, but I had someone say I should tell my story here, so please don't criticize it too much as I am not the best at writing. Okay, for reference, I was a young teen around 14 or 15. My father had a rough time with women and always seemed to have bad luck with them, until he started dating an old high school friend that we'll just call Susan. She was a cool woman. I was glad my dad found love in his life again. He deserved it. Susan was kind to me and even had 2 kids of her own, one younger and one older than me, but they didn't come around often. My dad dated her off and on for over a year thinking he was super lucky, but soon we started having problems that escalated until the breaking point. I'll start from the beginning and you'll see that I'm not lying when I say that. Susan is an evil woman. Susan is a struggling drug addict that my dad knew about and had tried to help her through it, but she was always fighting him on it and had moments of pure rage. I hated when people yelled and fought with each other. I'm kind of emotional and I start getting weepy. I don't know why. Anyway, my dad had a bad accident when he was hunting behind the woods behind our house. He was coming down and halfway down, he fell and perfectly landed one of his legs on a rock that completely shattered his kneecap. He had to have surgery and go on heavy pain medication to keep him comfortable. 3 weeks and he came home, but needed crutches for months and still had some heavy pain meds. Enter Susan, who was hardly around the hospital during my dad's entire stay. She would end up sneaking my dad's pills when he was asleep and just abuse them all the time. My dad ended up hiding them from her. That was the moment things went downhill. First, she tried to convince me to steal my dad's meds so she could take them, saying that if 2 or 3 go missing he won't know. I was appalled at what I was hearing. I refused and I thought her behavior was out of line, but my dad still believed she was a good person. Next, I have to admit that I suffer from low self-esteem and emotional anxiety from time to time. It was a while after the pill issue that Susan came and was trying to convince me to run away from my dad because he didn't care about me anymore. I was in a bad time in my life and she succeeded in making me do just that. I did come back afterwards when I was found on the road by the police. She was turning me and my dad against each other and got us literally yelling at each other, but we resolved this and after some reflection, we both realized that for all the major problems we have had happen, Susan was the instigator. My dad promised she'd be gone soon, and wouldn't ya know it. Dad found out she was actually cheating on him. He walked in on her and her ex when he went to her place to break up. It made his choice a lot easier. Susan was gone. We finally had our lives back, or so we thought. One day I came home from school and went into our house to find that it was completely trashed. I was shocked and confused and didn't know what was going on. My dog was acting normal and happy to see me, but everything was wrecked. I looked around and saw my Xbox 360 and we were stolen along with most of my games. My dad's room was also in tatters, so I decided to call my dad to ask what was going on. A family friend actually showed up during this and looked around too. My dad rushed home and was absolutely furious when he went inside. Our friend left and Dad checked around and noticed that only his pills were stolen from his room. We knew instantly that it was Susan. Our dog was acting normal because she knew Susan and was used to her. That's how she didn't get mauled by our dog and was able to rob us. Instantly, my dad began to figure out what to do. I suggested that we call the police, but my dad refused. He called dibs. Being ex-military, even with a bad leg, made him a dangerous man to fuck over. He found out that her ex, a Russian dude that's a wannabe gangster, helped rob us. My dad acted as swiftly as possible, and to be honest, I was scared. I thought he'd literally kill the both of them. It took 4 days for my dad to find out where they were staying. They moved in together at his house. My dad told me to stay home and drove over there at night with a baseball bat and his favorite pocket knife. Around midnight he came back and I saw stuff in the back of our car. He told me that my consoles were sold away and he couldn't have gotten them back. I asked what happened and he sat me down. He had went down and found that both of them were there that night and he honked his horn really loud and they came out. Susan didn't recognize the car in time and her ex, let's call him Tim, got scared to death as my dad got out, bat in hand. Now this dude was supposed to be a badass gangster that would beat anyone down, and my dad had only just recovered enough to not need crutches anymore. So in favor of odds, you'd expect Timmy to be itching to fight knowing he'd win, but he caved in. My dad had a reputation of being the guy who will beat down anyone who fucks with our family. He has beaten a few people around town that has hurt our friends or family. Tim apparently got on his knees and begged for his life, and that he'd do anything. And my dad, being the saint he is, told him to strip and give him all his clothes. Gay. Tim couldn't tear them off fast enough. Susan was about to go on to the house, presumably to call the police, when my dad told her not to move, or he'd beat Tim to death. He grabbed the clothes and told them to never come near our house again, or else. He also assured them that he'd be back. I was shocked, but glad my dad didn't kill anyone. He told me that I wasn't going to school tomorrow because I was coming with him to Susan's house. So the next day at noon, we showed up and Tim immediately saw him in his bedroom. My dad told me to get the big cardboard box he loaded up yesterday. We went in and he told Susan that he was taking their DVD collection. He went over and told me to take them all, which I did, albeit reluctantly. I was a bit uncomfortable with the situation, but was in awe of how badass my dad was being. He yelled for Tim and that dude ran right in like a dog and sat down on the couch. My dad told him he had a week to get out of our town. If he didn't, he'd have a bad time. Tim agreed profusely and my dad and I walked out. But before we left, my dad stopped and turned to Tim and told him to strip again and give him his clothes. Gay. I watched slack-jawed as Tim hurriedly pulled his clothes off and gave them to my dad. We eventually went home. They never called the cops. Too afraid, I guess, of the authorities or my dad, I don't know which, but we haven't heard from them since. Good riddance. Thank you for reading my first post on here.
You know, that humiliation routine of forcing a grown man to strip in front of his whore woman is something that can fuck up someone's psyche for life. Well done! And as for Susan, showing her that her so-called gangster protector is someone useless must have been a shattering experience as well. I call that nuclear enough, just not Godzilla level though. Viewer support is the best way for me to remain independent and continue bringing you these daily videos, which will always be here on my channels for you to watch absolutely free. So please consider subscribing to me on Rumble and on YouTube. Both will be linked in the description box down below. Thanks for listening everyone. If you even somewhat enjoyed today's story, make sure to give this video a thumbs up, and if you really like it, consider subscribing to PattSun to never miss a future upload. Stay strong.